Greetings, fellow programmers. My name is Pavel, and this is an exercise from chapter 7, exercise 16 from the book Starting Out with C++ from Control Structures through Objects. And the exercise name is called Two-Dimensional Array Operations. They want us to write a program that creates a two-dimensional array initialized with test data. They don't provide any, so we'll have to make some. They even say use any data that you wish, but this is what the program should do. It should have a function called getTotal, and this function should accept a 2D array as an argument, and it should return total of all the values in the array, so basically a sum of all the values in the array. getAverage, the same thing, accepts 2D array but returns the average of all the values. getRowTotal. Now this one accepts 2D array and an integer, and the integer means it's gonna be supplied by the user, and that basically is the number, the row number that we want to calculate. So let's say user presses 2, then we will calculate the sum of all the numbers in the row number 2. Now the getColumnTotal is similar, except this time obviously the user will supply the column number, and we will calculate the sum of all the numbers inside that one column. And getHighest in a row, again, user supplies the number of the row, and we will find the highest number in that row, and there's also lowest in a row, and obviously we will find the lowest number in the row that the user supplies. Now I'm gonna use a text file to create the 2D array. I'm not gonna initialize it manually, and it's basically just 1 through 50 in it's 5 columns, 1 2 3 4 5, and it's 10 rows, each obviously in 5s. So this is gonna be our two-dimensional array. This is gonna be our rows, obviously, and this is gonna be, well, cannot really highlight it, but it's gonna be columns. So when the user enters 3, we will calculate the row. We will calculate the sum of the row. Again, if he presses 3 for the column, then we will calculate the sum of the column. So that's just to explain what they mean, what the instructions mean. All right, so at this point, when you are working with two-dimensional arrays, I suppose you already know how to work with files, how to open text file, and so forth. So that's why I'm just gonna do it with a test file rather than initialize the array manually. So I'm gonna include IO stream, because we will have some input from the user. And we will also include the F stream, because we will be working with the file. We'll have an input from the file. Now we're using Visual Studio, so it creates this T main. So, but if you use anything else, you can just have main like this. That will work just fine. I'm gonna use, before I forget, using namespace standard. Now they want us to create some of the functions. They gave us the names, so we can already create prototypes because we know what functions they want us to do. Prototypes, and it's gonna be the thing that the first one, getTotal. It returns an integer. Since we are using integers, this is gonna return integers. So we will return integer, and we'll call the function getTotal, and according to the instructions, it's supposed to accept an array, a two-dimensional array. So before we actually do the prototypes, I'm going to create a constant called numRows, and as you guessed, that's the number of rows in our array, and integer number of columns, and that's the number of columns in our array, or basically in our file. When you look at the file, like I said, it has 5 columns and 10 rows. So the getTotal, it gets an integer array of size number of rows for the first dimension and number of columns for the second dimension, and the second one, let me see which one they wanted. getAverage. Alright, so let's do that. Again, well, average actually won't be an integer. It will return float because average is typically a decimal, or can be. So getAverage. And this one, is it supposed to take the two-dimensional array? Yeah. So it just takes the same thing. So I'll just copy paste it right there. I don't think it takes anything else. Yeah, just one argument. Alright, so row total. Let's do that one. This one will return integer because this time it's not an averaging or anything. There will be no division. We'll simply calculate the total of the row. So getRowTotal, and once again it takes the array, but it also is going to take the row number that the user supplies as an integer, and integer getColumnTotal. Again, it's gonna be the same thing, integer, so it's gonna be column number, and that was the get highest in the row and lowest. So integer, it returns integer, get highest in row, and once again it takes the row number, and finally we get the get lowest in row, and this one takes the integer column. Actually no, this one's still a row, so integer row number. So these are our prototypes. These are the functions that they want us to create. So yeah, I guess we can start working on those. So the first one is the, let me just copy paste this, getTotal. So how do you get the total from the two-dimensional array? Well, you add all the numbers together. So we will create a local variable. It's gonna be an integer because we will simply add all the numbers together, and since we have integer 1 through 50, the output will obviously be just an integer, so we will call it total, initialized to 0, and this is fairly simple. All you have to do is have the outer loop and an inner loop. Outer loop that will go through the rows, and inner loop that will go through the columns. So we have the integer I equals 0, I is less than the number rows, and I plus plus, and within this loop we will calculate the columns. So it's the same kind of a loop for integer. I'll just call it j equals 0, and j is less than the number of columns, and j plus plus. And over here we'll simply add each of the value to our total here. Alright, so our total will plus equal, we will be adding each number to it, equals the array, which is the passed array inside argument. So our array, I just call it ARR. So the array of the index of I and the index of j, because it's two-dimensional, so I represents basically the outer loop and j represents the inner loop. So at the end of after this loop runs, then we have our total. We have added all the numbers together, so we can return our total, which will return obviously the total of all the all the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 all the way to 50. So the next one is the getAverage, and it returns float again because averages often return the decimals. So float average, and actually the way we could do it, since we already calculated the total, we don't really have to calculate anything else. They want us to pass the array to it, but all we have to do is take the average and divide it by the number of columns multiplied by number of rows, which is give us the total number of elements, and that gives us the average. Basically, it will be the sum of 1 to 1 plus 2 plus 3 all the way to plus 50 divided by, since we have 5 rows, 5 columns and 10 rows, so the sum divided by 50 gives us the average. So that would be actually the probably better way to do it. This doesn't make much sense. Why would we calculate the total again? But hey, why not? We can do that. So let's just do it the way they want us to. So, but it's this is not how you would do it normally, because you're gonna repeat the same code. You still have to, in this way, you still have to calculate total. So, you know, in order to get the average, so it's like coding the same thing twice. So, since I'm not gonna code it twice, I'm just gonna copy paste it because we get our total here. So now we can divide our total. I'm sorry, we can get our let's just do it here. Let's get our float avg equals 0.0, and it's an f because it's a float. So now we can calculate our average. Again, like I said, it will simply equal to the total divided by how many elements there are. And like I said, if you multiply the number of rows multiplied by the columns, 5 multiplied by 10 gives you 50. So that's how many numbers there are in our 2D array. So it's the number of rows multiplied by number of columns, and that will give us our average. And now we can return it. Return avg. But like I said, this is a repetitive code, calculating total again. But for the sake of this exercise, let's just follow what I want. Alright, so that's our average. Now they want us to do the row total. So row total, integer get row total. Is that how I named it? Yeah. Okay, so and it expects the array. So I'm just gonna copy paste this. But it also expects the integer row number. In other words, what row are we actually adding together? So now the way we can do it is we can have the initialize our row total to 0. It's gonna be an integer, and we can basically loop again and just go through it and find the based on the row number, which is gonna give us the index of the row. We're gonna grab all those numbers in the row and add them together. Now here you have to realize, since we have the row number, let's say again user supplies number 3, we want this row, right? Well, technically you want this one because you know we start from 0, but obviously user wouldn't, so we have to kind of accommodate for that. So when the user enters 3, this is the row that we want to calculate. Now the way you loop through it, well, let me code it and I'll show you. That's gonna be probably easier. You do a for loop, just a single for loop, integer I equals 0, and I is less than, and you go, you loop through the columns, because you are doing the, it's kind of, okay, you do in the row, but there's only the, you don't go, you go horizontally, so you go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's 5 columns, so that's why you have to do it less than 5, which would be 4. Again, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. If you did it less than rows, which is 10, you would come over here and it would try to do element 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9, which there is none in a row. It's only in the columns. So since there are 5 columns, you go as I is less than number of columns. It might be a little confusing because you are calculating the row, but you have to realize this is a first number of the row. This is the second, third, fourth, and fifth, because they are organized in columns, and there are 5 columns. All right, so that's why you need to have a I is less than number of columns, not number of rows. And you of course do I plus plus. And over here, you simply add the row total together, just like we did with the other total up here. So we will do row total plus equals, and again you go looping through the array, but the number, the row number is set. So this is your first element of the first dimension of the array is the rows. So since that the number is set, you don't do I or C. There even isn't any. You do the row number, because that's a constant in this case. You always, like this user supplies 3, this number remains the same. You wanna have a row number 3 and an index number 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So the second dimension will be the I that you are looping through, because that's one, it goes from 0 to 5. So again, user supplies 3 as the argument, and then you go I equals 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's the third row, which reminds me, it's the row number minus 1, because again user will supply number 3, but in our case that basically is the counting starts from 0. So I think, well, we'll see when we run it. It might or may not, but I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah, let me see. So we will return the column total. I'm sorry, not column total, row total. And the similar way to do it is for the column. So it's the column total. Again, it expects the same array and not a row number in this case, but a column number. And over here it won't be row total, it will be column total. And here you go in reverse. Since you are going to calculate the column total, let's say user enters 3, so you want this column. The column is the constant. The rows change, so you will have an index of 0 and 2, then 1 and 2, 2 and 2, 3 and 2, all the way to the bottom, to the last column or to the last row. So over here, instead of number of columns, it's the opposite, it's the number of row. I plus plus, and over here it's gonna be the column total plus equals, and this is again reversed. This is gonna be I, which is the row that keeps changing, and column number is what's constant. So column number minus 1, and we will return column total. Okay, now they want us to do the getting the highest and the lowest in a row, and that's not too difficult. If by now maybe you are already kind of getting the hang of it. So highest in row. Now let me just copy it if I named it right. Highest in row. I did. Oh, all right. So well, it actually expects the row number and the array. So I'm just gonna copy paste that. So that's our signature for our function, and it returns integer. And let's just do integer highest and assume that it's the first element of that row. Again, we are calculating a row, so it's gonna be the similar way like this. When we calculate total, now we'll simply be looking for the highest number in that row. So let's assume that the highest number is the row number, because again, first dimension is the rows, second dimension is the columns, and the first element would be of that row would be 0, obviously. So let's assume that's the one. That's what we will be comparing to. So we will do a for loop. Integer I equals 0. I is less than number. Do you know what? Columns, because we are doing the rows, just like when we get in the total. And I plus plus. And here we will simply do a comparison. If the array of the row number and I, in other words, whatever number we are on within the loop currently, if that is greater than the highest, well, then we have a new highest, right? So our highest will now equal this. Whatever the value that element holds is our new highest. And at the end of the loop, we will have the highest number, so we can return the highest. Alright, so I don't know why this is function highest has already been declared as a global variable. Let me see what that even means. Oh, I have too many. I think. Let me see. Yeah, I don't know. Like that. There you go. I think that should fix it. Yeah. Alright, so that's our highest, and obviously our lowest will be very similar. It takes the same signature, except we will rename this get lowest in a row. It's gonna be lowest. And we'll still assume that this is the lowest. We just select the first element, and we will compare every number we need to against that. And if there is a one that is lower, we will assign the new value to it. So if this one is less than the lowest, then our lowest equals the new value. And we're still doing a row, so nothing really changes there. And we will return the lowest. So that's our function. So now let's demonstrate it. So go up to our main method. And well, like I said, we are using a file, so let's do the fstream. I'll just call it input file, and we will create the array with the number of rows and the number of columns, which, remember, it's our constant. And we will do our integer total equals 0, float avg equals 0.0f, and integer row total equals 0. These are all the values that will be returned from the functions and assigned to our variables inside the main function. So integer, what was this? Column total 0, actually it's 0, and integer highest in row equals 0, and integer lowest in I'll just do it lowercase, lowest in row equals 0. And I'm going to create two more called number, row number, to keep track of it, because this is gonna be the input from the user, you know, when we calculate the sum of the numbers in a row and the sum of the numbers in the columns, in a column that the user wants. So this one gonna be the column number equals 0. I don't think we need any more variables. That might be all. So let's just get the file. So our input file dot open, and I named the file test file dot txt, and I'm gonna close it. I don't know. I don't think it would matter. I think it would still read it, but just in case. So let's quickly do like a quick check if there's something wrong with the file. It's just a good habit. If the file if there's something wrong with it, let's just see out, I don't know, error reading file, and else if everything is okay, then we can proceed and actually call our functions. Now well, actually first, I'm sorry, before we call our functions, this is only checking if the file is correct. If it is, then we actually have to create or assign it to our array over here, to our number of rows and columns. So we will do simple for loop, integer r, I'll do it r as rows, r is less than the number of rows, r plus plus, and within it we will do the columns. So integer c equals 0, c is less than the number of columns, and c plus plus. And we will simply do our input file and assign it the value from the file into the array of r for the rows as the first dimension, and c for columns as the second dimension. Alright, so after the for loop, let's close the file. We don't need it anymore. It should be already read. Everything should be good. And alright, let's call our function. So let's calculate our total first. So our total equals get total of array. Alright, that's the array that we are passing in. To calculate the total, we only pass in the array as an argument. Alright, our average, which is the second thing, equals the get average, and again we pass in the array. We could, like I said before, we could simply pass the total. We just calculate it right here instead of going through it again and only do the calculations here, because the total is already calculated right here. But like I said, I'm just gonna follow the exercise this time, although it kind of bugs me. I don't like to do double coding like that, but anyway. Alright, so that's the average, and for the other four, or how many functions we have, we need to collect the input from the user first. We need to find out what the row and column the user wants to use. So let's just do cout what row would you like to process, and we can do our cin will be the row number. Now, I'm not gonna be checking whether the user entered correct number. Like if the user enters 100, then obviously the program would blow up because there is now index 100 in our array. But if you want to do that, you could, you know, be a little defensive programming and actually do like an if statement, kind of like if the row number is less than 0 or more than 10, then throw an error or something like that. I'm not going to go through that. So I'm just going to do now the column. What column would you like to process? and do end of line, and we will see in the column number, right? And now all we have to do is to call our functions and assign the return values into our variables that we created right here in our main method. So our what was the first one? RowTotal equals getRowTotal, and we will pass the array. My IntelliSense already tells me, okay, it expects the array with 10 and 5, and it's getting it because that's I just called it array, and it also expects the row number that the user entered. So row number. The column total, it's gonna be getColumnTotal, and again it expects the array, but this time it expects the column number that the user entered. Now highest in row equals get highest in row. We're calling the method and passing the array and the row number. So the row number right there, and the lowest in row equals get lowest in row, and again passing the array and the row number. So we have all calculations done here, and we can output the output. So cout total sum of all numbers is, and we can do our total. That's the first thing we calculated right here, the total. Yep. Okay, so that's our total. And actually, so it's not all crammed together, I'm gonna do end line. So on the new line we will do cout average of all numbers is, and that's the average that we calculated, and a line, and cout that's gonna be the sum of row number, and this is what the user entered, so I'm just gonna enter the row number, and is and it's the row total. All right, and a line, and a line, and I'm gonna copy paste this because this is gonna be similar for the second one, except this one will be the column number, and this is gonna be column number is, and this is gonna be column total. All right, and now the highest and lowest. All right, so cout, actually, you know what, let me just copy paste it again. Actually no, this one, because I'm gonna be doing the rows. So this is the highest number in a row number is, and over here it's gonna be the highest in row, and I'll just copy paste this thing. Let me just move this over so you can see it better, and this is gonna be the lowest number in the same row is, and this is gonna be the lowest in a row. Okay, so it's all set. How about we run it? Well, let's see what we get. If anything, hopefully it will build. It's building, but slowly. Okay, error reading file. I think I may have placed it in a wrong spot. And yeah, that was the case. I just took the file and placed it into my other folder, directly into the root, because I'm not supplying any path. I'm just supplying the file, so it expects it to be in the root of the solution. So when I run it now, it asks what row would you like to process. Now there's 10 rows, so let's do number 3, I guess. Why not? We did it before. And column number 4. Alright, so it says the total sum of all numbers is 1275, which average would be 25. Let me see if that would it calculate correctly. 1275 divided by 50 is 25.5. So we didn't take the decimal. I have to look into that. And let's look in at our file. And I open it. So I entered row number 3, which would be this one, and it says that the sum is 65. Well, let's do that. Let's see. 11 plus 12 plus 13 plus 14 plus 15. There you go, 65. Okay, so that's correct. The sum of column 4 is 265. So column 4, which would be this one, just so you can see it better, these are, you know, the spacing is different because these are 1-digit numbers as opposed to 2 digits, but it's obviously still the same number of columns. So column number 4, this is 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, geez, so it's 4 plus 9 plus 14 plus 19 plus 24 plus 29 plus 34 plus 39 plus 44 plus 49, 265. What do you know? 265, sum of column 4. The highest number in row number 3 is 20. Oh, that's because I remember the -1. I forgot to do it in those, so it actually is number 4 too from this perspective. And number 3 would be again this one, 16. So there's few little bugs. So the decimal is wrong, and the highest and lowest, we forgot to get the -1 into our function when we are calculating when we started over here. Remember the column number -1 and row number -1. It's the same thing. Row number -1, and oh, hold on a second. No, we can just do it this way instead of messing with these. Since they are all over the place, we can do it right in our argument. We can do the row number -1 right here. So or maybe not. Expected parameter declaration. Okay. So we'll just come over here and do -1 here and -1 to all of these. Or we could do something like this, even better. How about we do integer row equals row number -1, and that way I don't have to mess with any of these. I will simply replace them with the variable row right here, and I will paste it right here as well, and pass the row instead of the row number. You know what I'm doing, right? I mean, we get in the actual number that the user enters, but we need to do the -1, and instead of going around and doing row number -1, row number -1, I assign it to the row number -1 to a very local variable called row, and use that instead. So let's try it again. We had the 3 for the row and 4 for the column, and if you look at the file, let me see the file again. So row number 3, the highest number is 15, which it is right here, and the lowest is 11, which it is. So now we have to address the average. Okay, so the average is giving us a hard time because it's doing calculations with the integers. So what we can do after we calculate all of these, let's just do something like this. I'll put all these, the whole calculations, into parentheses and divide it by 1.0. It won't change the result, but it will make it a decimal. It will force it to be a decimal. So again, 3 and 4. Oh, it didn't force it to be a decimal after all. That's just a second. Well, what we can do instead, let me just delete that, and we can make our total a float instead. I mean, even though it's gonna be an integer, let's make it a float, and that should return a float. Yeah, this is one of those things of C++ with all these integers and there you go. Yeah. Alright, so the reason why is now it's given 25.5, which is correct. The problem was that it was an integer operation, the whole thing, and the total was still an integer. So it, even though I did the 1.00, it still didn't take it. And but when you change this one of the numbers to float, it will kind of force it to return the float. So again, we got the correct number. So let's do a row number 1 and column number 1. Column number 5. So this is the same. Obviously, the total sum won't change. Neither will the average, because it's all the numbers didn't change. But the sum of number of row number 1 is what was it? 15. 1, 3, 6, 10, 15. That's correct. And the column number 5 is 275. Alright, let's just check it out to make sure that everything's working out. Plus 10, plus 15, plus 20, plus 25, plus 30, plus 35, plus 40, 45, and 50. 275. And that is correct. And the lowest number is 1 of the row, and 5 is the highest. So yeah, there you go. It's working fine. I hope it makes sense, what we are doing. This is I know that students, especially the beginners, they have a harder time with the arrays, and then when they get to the two-dimensional arrays, they panic, and they have a hard time, kind of wrapping their minds around the concept. But just think of it as columns and rows, or rows as the first dimension and columns as the second dimension. And when you do that and you realize, okay, number 8 over here, what is the position of it? Well, you know that it starts from 0, so it's row number 0, so it's row number 1. So it's 1, the index 1, and now you go to columns 0, 1, and 2. So the index is 1 for the row and 2 for the column. It's like x and y coordinates. So yeah, as long as you can visualize, the position of the element within the two-dimensional array, then you'll be fine. All right, so there you have it. I hope this was helpful, that it showed you a few things, that it helped you understand the how the two-dimensional arrays work in C++. We took care of a few little bugs that hopefully showed you, those floats in C++. And as always, if you liked it, leave a like, leave a comment, share with your friends, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.